Everyone, thanks for coming this afternoon to check out Help, How Do I? This is going to be a fast sprint webinar all about answering your most common questions about getting started or things you might get stuck on with Seesaw. So I'm Angela. I have been a kindergarten teacher for 15 years, but now I am full-time working with Seesaw to ensure teacher success. Of course, connect with me on Twitter and follow at Seesaw as well for great ideas from our teacher community. So we're going to jump right in here today with one of the questions I hear all the time. Why can't my students copy and edit an item? Okay, so you know in Seesaw, when you are working in Seesaw, I'm going to jump into a class here. This view right now is via the web. I'm signed into a class. A lot of times teachers forget that in order for students to copy and edit an item, they need to turn on one little feature. So if you have created something and you want to have your students copy and edit it and add it to their own portfolio, what you first need to do as a teacher is tap in the upper left into your profile icon, scroll down to Manage Class, and then the setting we're talking about here is Enable Item Editing. So if that is not toggled on, your students will not get the option to copy and edit an item. And that is the most likely kind of blocker in this process. That's the common thing that teachers don't have turned on. So once you have that turned on, a student could then go to the three dots, go to Copy and Edit, and then they will be able to make their changes to this item that have created, and then add that to their Seesaw journal. So keep in mind as well, obviously when I tap the three dots as a teacher here, I have tons of different options that won't show up for students, but they will see copy and edit as long as you have turned on Enable Item Editing. So on the next slide here, I just have, again, those quick steps for you. When you get the slides, you can check that out again, just to make sure you have that turned on. Okay, second question that I get asked all of the time, especially after our label feature came out, was how do I share an item into another Seesaw class? Okay. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to jump onto my iPad that I have connected here, because if you are on iOS devices, this is actually pretty easy. So what I can do is, from the teacher perspective, if I tap the three dots and I go to Share Item, I can then choose to share it to Seesaw. Now I know this sounds a little bit strange because we're already in Seesaw, but you'll see that your class that you're currently in pops up. But on the very bottom here, you'll see Not in Brand New to Seesaw. Tap here to change your class. So if you tap here, you can select any other class that you are a co-teacher in, and you can add that item to that class, okay? So maybe I'm gonna add it to this PD class, so that item that I'm sharing will go into that class, okay? So keep in mind though, when it goes to that class, it will be viewable to those that are looking at it. It's not something, however, that students will be able to copy and edit if they're in a different class. Okay, so it works great if you're sharing a video link to a different class, if you're sharing an announcement or a newsletter or a photo, works great to share that way. Now, if you're not on iOS, obviously to share to another class, you have a few more steps. So if you want to share an item, you would have to tap, again, here I'm on the web here. You would have to tap the three dots and you could download the item, but then you would need to go into the class you want to add it to and upload it. So we hope in the future to make this process a little bit easier, but that's the workaround at this point. All right, third question I get asked all the time is how do I keep some items private for conferences? So the solution here, the easiest solution, is to actually be using Seesaw Plus or Seesaw for Schools, because in those upgraded versions of Seesaw, you have something that's called the private folder. So I'm going to jump into our class here again, and because I have Seesaw Plus or Seesaw for Schools, I have this option here. If I tap this folder, I can actually add an item to this private folder. Okay, so a little warning comes up and it says, Keep in mind, you're adding this to a teacher-only folder. Students and family members or parents cannot see this item. And they're warning me because I've actually just shared this item to a different class. So that's kind of the easiest way to, if there's things that are being added to Seesaw that you don't want to, have families get yet or even have available for students in their feed, then you would just add it to that private teacher-only folder. Now you're thinking, that's all wonderful, Angela, but I do not have Seesaw Plus and I do not have Seesaw for Schools. What do I do? So if you want to do a workaround, if you're using free Seesaw and you don't want items to be shared, if you don't want a family to see an item, what you can also do is create essentially a fake student. So I have here Angela, that's kind of my student, and you could add items to just that, student potentially. And then of course, because no family members are connected to that student, maybe you're having it as conferences or whatnot, they wouldn't get notified. But keep in mind that's still going to be viewable in your feed if you have students can view each other's work. So it's not entirely private. So keep that in mind. The best option is really to use Seesaw Plus and the private folder option. Okay, number 4 question I get a lot is my students can't see the class feed. Okay, so a couple things to know about that. I'm going to talk specifically about, and I'm jumping back into my iPad here. I'm going to talk specifically, this question comes up a lot if you are a teacher that is using a QR class sign-in with shared devices. So right now, if I go into my profile icon and I go into Manage Class, I'm going to see that this class, the student sign-in mode is class code shared devices. So basically, if I come down here and I turn off students can see each other's work, that's basically going to turn this into an add-only option for my students. The reason that is because when you are in a shared situation, the iPad doesn't know who's holding the device. Okay, so if you have content that you've already said that you don't want any other student to be able to view other student work, they're actually not going to be able to view the class feed because the app can't tell who's holding the iPad at that time. So if you want students to be able to view the class feed, you need to go into Manage Class and make sure that students can see each other's work is turned on. That has to be turned on if you want students to be able to view their work or the class feed if you're using shared devices. Now, if I go into class student sign-in mode here and I change it to one-to-one devices or email Google, they're going to be able to see the feed of their items in the class feed. So keep that in mind because obviously they're signed into that device. We know who it is. We know who's working in Seesaw, so we can show all of their items to that student. So, but they wouldn't, again, see the class feed items if students can view each other's work is turned off. So that's really quick, and I went through those helpful tips super fast. So let's take a couple moments to answer some questions. So if you have questions about any of those 4 common questions that we get asked a lot, you can go ahead and type them into our question box right now. And make sure you're connecting with our amazing teacher community. If you're not on Seesaw Teachers on Facebook, amazing group sharing tons of awesome ideas. Definitely check that out. Of course, on Twitter as well. And I hope you really come back and check out more recorded and live webinars on our PD's website. So keep in mind you will get this recording and the slides as well, and check back for more. But let's jump into some questions.